Who, what, when, where, why. Question words or interrogatives in English display a very clear pattern. All of them begin with WH. In this video, I'll look deep into the history of the English language and other languages to explain why, and uncover the reason behind the glaring exception to the rule, the word how. It's not just English which has lots of question words that start with the same letters. Here are a few other examples of languages with a similar feature. In some languages, such as German, all the basic interrogatives start with the same letter. In others, like English and modern Greek, nearly all do. And in many more languages I haven't listed here, at least a few question words start with the same sound. But peculiarly, this sound isn't the same across languages. English w, German v, Greek p, Hindi k, Catalan qu. There's a lot of variation in the consonant sound you hear at the start of interrogatives. To see how that's happened, we have to trace back the language's history. These languages, along with many others, are part of the same family. They're all Indo-European languages, which means they are all ultimately descended from a prehistoric language, reconstructed as proto-indo-European. And it's this language which holds the key to the initial letters of question words across European and Indic languages. In proto-indo-European, interrogatives were formed from a single root, qu. These simple original words formed the basis of an array of question words in Indo-European languages. See how Latin formed its question words from them, most starting with qu, and others, because of various changes, ending up looking different. In this way, Latin isn't too different from English. All interrogatives start with the same letters, apart from limited exceptions. Latin is just one branch of Indo-European. Different groups of Indo-European languages saw the original question words develop in different ways. We saw that in most cases, Proto-Indo-European qu at the start of question words became Latin qu with the sound qu. In Indic languages like Hindi, Baltic languages like Lithuanian, and Celtic languages like Irish, qu was merged with another consonant to give a k sound. So in these language families, most question words begin with k. In Greek, however, a more drastic change affected the Proto-Indo-European sound, which started question words. It became p in some cases and t in others, producing the modern Greek interrogatives. Most begin with p, but a key exception, the word for what, begins with t. But to explain English interrogatives starting with WH, we have to look at what happened in the Germanic group, because this is the language family English is part of. In Germanic, Proto-Indo-European qu became hua. This was part of a bigger realignment of Germanic consonants called Grimm's law. In Old English, this consonant, Proto-Germanic hua, was pronounced hua, written as an H followed by a W, hua. But later, during the use of Middle English, the spelling changed, and the conventional spelling for hua became WH. That's why the spellings of most English question words begin with WH. But this leaves two questions unanswered. Firstly, what explains the pronunciation of WH in these words? The word what starts with a w sound, but the word who starts with a h sound. And what about the word how? Why does this word break the rule? It turns out that the answers to these two questions are closely related. A few seconds ago, I introduced WH as wh, but this isn't actually how most English speakers pronounce these two letters. Most English speakers don't say what, they say what. Listen again, most English speakers don't say what, they say what. This is because most varieties of English have undergone a sound change called the wine-whine merger. This means that these two words, wine and wine, sound exactly the same, where previously they would have been pronounced differently, wine and whine. But before this merger happened, another change occurred to words starting with WH. Here's a list of words starting with WH in English, which will help us to spot the pattern. If we rearrange these into two lists, one where WH has the W sound, and one where WH has the H sound, you might notice the difference between the two groups. The H sound occurs before the vowel O. This is because in Middle English there was a sound change that affected wh before the oo sound in who, turning wh into h. But the affected words, including who, continued to be spelt with WH, because that was how they'd been spelt before. Now we can turn to the word how, the exception to our rule about the first letters of question words. Originally, how started with a wh sound too, but like who, it now starts with a h sound. But unlike who, the h sound at the start of how is reflected in its spelling. It begins not with WH, but with H. What happened to how is very similar to what happened to who, but it just happened earlier. As we learnt, in Middle English there was a sound change where wh became h before the vowel sound in who. Well, how has a different vowel sound, ow, and wh before that sound underwent the same change, wh to h, even earlier in Old English. And because it happened earlier, before spellings became standardized, this sound change was reflected in its spelling, so how was written starting with an H. So that's why how is the only basic question word in English that doesn't begin with WH. This is a tricky topic to get to grips with, but it can be so satisfying to finally understand the reason behind these strange English rules and exceptions. If it still hasn't clicked for you yet, don't worry. You can rewind, you can change the speed of the video, and you can turn on subtitles. All my videos are fully subtitled, so they're easier to follow. I hope you've enjoyed learning why question words start with WH. I've made other videos about the use of letters of the alphabet, and you can check them out on my channel. Thank you for watching this video from Philologism. Was there anything that surprised you? Leave a comment. While you're here, like, subscribe and hit the bell icon so you'll get another video from Philologism every week.